Well, Greg, a win for the development side today, but it wasn't easy. Frankston giving you trouble all day.
Yeah, we started a little bit slowly in that first quarter. We're a few goals down, but to our credit, we'd fought back at half-time, but they didn't give up, so it was a hard-fought struggle all day, mate.
I saw at three-quarter time pointing out the tackle count. You were happier with the pressure that was in the third quarter?
Yeah, I thought our pressure after the first quarter was much better. Our endeavour in the forward line, keeping the ball in there, just having a go, really.
Frankston certainly troubled near the end. They managed to get the lead at some stage. It didn't seem like the structures were quite sticking as the pressure was on.
No, our boys started to ball chase a little bit, and it was more everyone was heading to the ball and not sort of holding their ground as such. And when you do that, they tend to pop out over the top and they could get free. So they got in front there, but to our credit, we came back well.
Good to see the experience of Heath Farrell helping out, particularly in that last player that got the ball to Chris Prowse to kick the goal.
Yeah, Heath has been terrific in his comeback. It's been a long time coming, and I thought today was his real standout game, and he's ready for senior selection at any time.
And also another one coming back from injury, Damien Mercedes.
Damien Mercedes, very classy halfback, uses the ball really well, and again today he was pivotal in our performance.
And who are some of our other standout performers today?
Well, Johnny McKenzie had a good game on the wing, which was a really good effort. Tom O'Sullivan was terrific in the midfield, nice and hard. Smithy back to his best in the midfield, and then the two big fellas competed pretty well. So Prowse and Sammy Gilbert, all goes well for the future.
And I guess a few things to take away from the different shape that the Frankston ground is, being here next week again to take on Sandringham.
Yeah, look, I think we learned a little bit about our forward line structures, and I think we can implement those against Sandy. Hopefully we can continue our winning streak.
Average. Oh, I don't think you can describe it any other way, Paul. I think it was very average. We had a isolation. The first quarter, I thought we were fairly competitive. It seemed to be that we had a bit of an appetite for the contest, but once we actually became undisciplined, reactive, indecisive, we actually afforded probably 5 goals to Frankston that someone out of the under-12s could have potentially kicked and been able to execute. So we really caved into their pressure from Frankston's and their style of play, their players that were running into space. So our lack of discipline to man up, our lack of discipline to give away 50-metre penalties, our lack of discipline to actually set tight with our structures and formations, I thought was as bad as we've seen it for quite some time. So we then had to regroup at half-time, and of course we let the lead blow out to about 5 goals or 6 goals or something, I think, of that nature. And then in the last quarter, when we decided to actually rest the momentum back by playing a reasonably basic brand of footy and being able to execute somewhere near what we want, we put enough pressure on them and of course got within a kick. And having said that, there might have still been a chance that we could have potentially snatched it at the end of the day, but that might have been totally unjust, and full credit goes to Simon and Frankston. They had to regroup from last week because they had a nasty loss, and they showed, and this is the way this competition's going to be. But I think we're at a very interesting time in relation to what happens for us as a team, and it's going to be a real character test of where these guys want to go and how hard they're prepared to fight and dig in. And I'm just going to keep flipping the side around, and the reserves had a good win today, and I'll just have to keep doing it until I find the mix, because right now the mix is not exactly where we want it to be.
How hard are you feeling the loss of some of your senior men, Gaz?
Oh, look, you feel it deeply, Paul, but that's not an excuse, because there are other senior players out there, there are other inexperienced players out there too, but there's not a lot of guys who I can look at in my squad and say, geez, he's in blue chip form, he's at the top of his game, and there's a lot of things that we are doing which are basically extremely hard, and I think we're leaving our defence to hang out to dry a little bit at the minute, and there just doesn't seem to be a real spark and that sort of Port Melbourne desire and that belief amongst the group at the minute. It seems to be eradicated a little bit. Now, we didn't get ahead of ourselves because I warned them before the game that it was going to be a contest that we've got to be up for, and you try and get momentum, but of course you don't. And down here, Frankston, doesn't matter whether they're 0-1 or 5-4, it doesn't matter. The games between Port and Frankston are always fierce contests, and they played the better. So Simon obviously got his boys up and about, and of course they responded. So it took us a long time to respond.
Still think the squad's got that fierce desire that's driven Port Melbourne last 4 or 5 years, guys?
Not at the minute, which it can only be on what your actions are. And actions are the loudest way that you can display what you're saying. And I didn't see that for long periods today. So I'd have to question that as a coach at the minute. And that's just being realistic, and that's just a reality check. So past performances don't mean anything. You don't have a God-given right to actually say, well, I'm going to front up season 2013 because I've made the last 3 grand finals, and of course then continue to flow in that rich vein of form. It doesn't matter. So you've got to make it your own, you've got to make a spot for your own, and at the minute those guys are out, so that's a fact. So what we've now got to do is really look at each individual who is potentially looking at a role to play within the team, and if he's not up to it, well, we'll just flip it around. And guys that are going to be in form, which is always a criteria of selection, have got to be picked, and whether they're 1 game or whether they're 100 games at VFL level, if they're not doing what we want them to do, well, of course, you've got to go back somewhere and do what you want to do.
And you're back at Carr Street again next Sunday, guys, to tackle the Zebras.
Yeah, and that's all part of what's going on off the field, which we can't do anything about. So we just make sure next week is about rectifying things, and we've just got to be able to put in a performance that is based on 4 quality quarters. It's not 1 here or 1 there or 2 there, and the massive swing in inconsistency in quarters is really perplexing at the minute. I'm looking at how you can put your finger on as to explain that. There's momentum swings in the game for and against, but we're contributing a lot to what's going on at the minute, and there's not that real strong, intense, contested competition that we want at Port.
Borough TV is a Port Melbourne Football Club production.